Alright, we're back for the third video here. So in the last video we discussed values and definitions of those values and how that works. So let's get into the actual script since we are ready. So right now the script has been started. It's running. Right now it's locked, so we can't do anything to modify the script or to modify anything except do what we need to do. So once we go from setup, which just sets up all our variables, we go to prep. And prep basically gets the system ready to start. So the first thing we do is we hide the brew status. Now, before, when we did our enable brewing, it said brew status disabled. So there's actually two statuses that are exactly the same color, shape, and size. And once we start this script, it hides the other one, just to take up less space. So that's the first thing it does, is it hides the status from brew status to the status. So then the second thing it does is stops this script of enable brew. So now I can click this script 100 times and it's not going to do anything because the script isn't running. It makes sure all the drain lines and e-stops are turned on. So right here we have a boil kettle drain, a boil kettle line drain, mash tun drain, hot liquor tank drain. There's a valve at the lowest point in every one of these vessels. So when you're done rinsing, you can drain the system fully. So I leave the system open to air dry after every session. So the first thing the script does is make sure all those valves are turned off, because if they were on and I started adding water, it would just run out. So I have e-stop scripts, which I have buttons for: e-stop, 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 which is it stands for emergency stop, but basically it's every valve and pump and thing tied to that vessel. If you hit e-stop, it shuts it and goes to off. So let's look at those scripts. Let's start with BK e-stop state. So this is a script that always runs, and it always runs in a loop and waits for this button press. So you can see state's false, it waits to true. So if I click that true, or if I have the script make that true, it runs through and makes sure elements off, out, every valve, every pump, everything is off. So it's your emergency stop. So if something happens, you got liquid going where it shouldn't be, boom, you hit that button, everything shuts down and stops. So each one of the vessels has that, and everything tied to that vessel, if you hit that button, goes to off or false, just so you can emergency stop it. So let's go back to brew. So once those are ready, once those are ready and set to off, the status goes to ready to brew. Now, we defined our status right here, string status. So status is the name of whatever string of text this is going to display. And this is kind of our heads up indicator of what step we're in the process and what's coming next and all that fun stuff. So you'll see in the script a lot of status text. So it says status equal ready to brew. So status ready to brew. Now it's going to wait for me. So once it does the e-stops and shuts everything, it's going to wait for me to hit brew start. Now when I hit brew start, it's going to go true, and then it's going to tell me to input my recipe parameters. So let's do that. So let's make brew start true. We just did. Now it says input recipe parameters. So again, we said status equal input recipe parameters. Now we could stop that, and it doesn't have to say input recipe parameters. It could say whoops, we're locked. It could say hello. And when we now click brew start, it says hello. So this can be whatever text you want it to be. And what I use it for is just to tell me basically either what's going on or what the next step in the process is. So let's put that back to how it was, and we'll run it. Alright, so we got to click brew start, input recipe parameters. So now on my other page, where I have all my parameters with my values that we defined, there's a recipe input button right here. So nothing's going to happen until I put in the recipe. And that's because I didn't want the system to do anything until I physically went to this page and clicked this recipe input button after I went through my variables. It's just a fail-safe measure to make sure I actually use my brew day sheet and go through here and visualize and input what the variables need to be. So let's just say we want 300 here, and this is a 5.5 gallon batch, and so my batch sizes are into the fermenter because I can only accommodate losses in the brew system. So I have a 0.5 gallon loss in the fermenter, so I want to knock out my batch size of 5.5. So we'll change that to 14. I mean, these values don't matter. Let's just say it was 9. Let's say my pre-boil volume is 7.5, my knockout temp, my headspace, and the mashes look good, and we're going to do one hop at 50 minutes. So once that happens, and I'm not going to physically click it because it's going to actually start the brew system, is once I hit that recipe button, let's pause the script. Once I hit that, it's going to tell me parameters accepted when I click this. Okay? And alright, sorry, we're back. So it's going to wait for me to click this recipe input. Then it's going to tell our status that this is going to change from input recipe parameters to parameters accepted. Tank state is going to go on. Here's my nitrogen tank. There's a solenoid valve that opens up to all the solenoid valves here. So it turns my nitrogen tank on. If there's some if statements here, those if statements come from here. If pre-purge state equal true, pre-purge state right here, which means the pre-purge basically, if I want to start brewing early in the morning, I can add my grain to the mash tun and all that stuff, and I can click pre-purge, and it's basically gonna start a script. If pre-purge state equal true, start purge MT. Purge MT is a script. That script is right here. That script says if my headspace oxygen value is greater than or equal to 2, 2 is my variable here, then you're gonna, or I'm sorry, less than or equal to 2, then it's going to turn everything off. But if it's greater than 2, it's going to do all these things. It's going to turn on the mash tun out valve. It's going to turn purge 4 on, purge 4 is right here, and that goes down to the bottom of the piping, and it's going to turn on, and then it's going to let that go for a minute. So it's going to pressurize the whole system, and then it's going to shut off the purge, and then turn on, blow off PRV up here, the vacuum pump, and wait until this pressure equals 0. So basically what we're doing is we're purging the whole mash tun just like you would purge a keg. So you fully pressure it up, and then you blow it all off. And so that's basically what that's doing. You pressurize the system with purge valve 4 from the bottom, and then you do your release valve here and your vac pump. And so it's just more efficient to have both at the same time. And then you wait till this pressure equals 0. Then you start the process again, and it'll keep purging until this value is less than or equal to 2. So that means there's less than or equal to 2% of oxygen in the headspace. And so that's that script it starts. So it starts that script right there. And it also says if auto brew state true, we're going to start a timer. And we're going to wait till that timer gets to 0. And then we're going to stop the timer. We're going to reset the timer to 0. And we're going to go to start. Well, start is the next step, which is defined by here. So that was our how to get out of an if statement. We tell it to go to a specific location. That specific location is start. Once it goes to start, then it's going to stop purging the mash tun, because then we're going to start brew. So what is the auto brew? The auto brew is a toggle with a timer. That timer is a time I want to start the brewing system early. So right now it's set to 10 seconds, which was just for testing. But let's say I want to do, let's say I want to do 5 hours. So if I select auto brew and 5 hours, that's going to start the system in 5 hours. And so that way I can start it in the morning before I get up, and it be to a certain point when I wake up. So that's the first section of prep, and that ran way too long, so we'll stop it here and we'll just keep moving on.